Hi there, BookTube. It's Roz, and I'm here today to talk about Parasol Against the Axe by Helen Oyeyemi. Now, you know that when I read something sort of newly published fiction that I think is interesting, I will, if I can, do a short standalone review that's kind of intended to give you an idea of whether you might also like to read it or not, as the case may be. Now, Helen Oyeyemi is a British-Nigerian author. She was born in Nigeria, grew up in South London, and she now lives in Prague, which is where this book is set. And this was published at the very end of January in the UK, and I think last week, first week of March in the US. So it's pretty much a hot off the press sort of book. Should you read it? Well, you know, if you watch this channel fairly regularly, that I quite like a weird book. You know, I'm good with a weird book, as long as it's not sort of just weird for weirdness' sake. Okay, and sometimes that can be a bit of a fine line, can't it? And Oyeyemi she's not yet 40. I think she's published 10 books. And I'd say she is known for being, well, not an easy read, shall we say. Someone who loves words, loves stories, but is not always the most accessible of novelists. Put it that way. And as I say, there's a sort of a fragile border between weird for weird's sake and deliciously, enjoyably, creatively weird. Now, for me, this book is just on the right side of that line, but it might not be for some readers, I suppose, is what I'm saying. It's, as I say, set in Prague. It's set in Prague over the weekend, like a hen weekend, for sort of running up to the wedding of Sophie and Polly. And if you're not from Europe, you might not know, but Prague is a bit notorious, or has been, as a venue for stag parties and hen weekends and so on. And that's something it's sort of known for. So far predictable in a sense. And the book has two central characters other than Sophie and Polly, and these are Hero and Thea, and they are both friends, or maybe ex-friends of Sophie and Polly, more Sophie, and have been invited or not to this hen weekend. So far, so good. As much as Hero and Thea, I would say Prague is the central character of this story, and indeed is sometimes the narrator of the book. At the beginning of the book, Prague is the narrator, and Prague pops back up in that role. It's another kind of key element of the book is a book within a book. Something I always quite like, but yeah, not everyone does, I know. And this book within the book is called, let me get this right, Undressing Paradox. Yeah. And both Hero and Thea are given this book to read, but the book is a shapeshifter. The cover is always the same, but each new person, or even the same person a second time, when they open the book, the story inside is different. And those stories are, again, kind of circle around Prague and the history of Prague and the history of Bohemia and Czechoslovakia and the Czech Republic and Czechia, as it is now. So we get medieval Prague, and we get Prague in the sort of 1950s under communism. We get 1989, sort of as things are about to change Prague. One of my favourite of the stories is set in Prague in 1943 and based around a Jewish taxi dancer. Someone who was sort of hired to dance with people in a sort of a nightclub venue. Wonderful. So you get sort of glimpses of Prague through time, except not overly literal glimpses. Sometimes quite fantastic in those how those stories, the characters and what happens in those stories, and then we also get some blurring between those stories and what might be our sort of real life story in present day Prague. So there's the stories within the book. Then you also get almost like a slight element of travelogue in the book. Prague, the tourists see, scenes, moments, descriptions of, the Charles Bridge or, particular churches and also the Prague that, residents live in as I say, Helen Oyeyemi lives there now, and they're sort of they're brilliant moments at times. One of my absolute favourites, and they can kind of one of my favourite moments is Hero is wandering around late in the evening and can't find the way back to her bed and breakfast, and this sort of hotel. This woman appears with a wheelbarrow, and her evening job is as a kind of a wheelbarrow taxi to wheel drunken stag and hen party tourists back through the twisty alleys and streets of the old city to when they can't stagger home to their hotel or their Airbnb. Glorious moment in the story. There is a plot of sorts that involves Sophie and Hero and Thea's past friendship and past maybe criminal kind of things, that they did together. And so there's a kind of I suppose a theme in the story about consequences of past actions, and that generates a kind of an enjoyable sense of threat for some of the time. I loved Thea's backstory. So Thea was born in Prague, and she defects as a child with her father, but her mother stays behind and becomes a writer of children's books that are turned into animations, and those animations are shown all around the world, and those animations are almost like a sort of an alternative or idealized version of Thea that she has to spend her life escaping from. The real life bits, as I say, of the story can be as fantastic and surreal at times as the story bits. Thea, there's this sort of running thing where she's kind of pursued around Prague by someone dressed up as a giant mole that is another cartoon character. Yeah, I think you should be starting to get the picture. What else should you know? It's quite violent at times, this book. It's a book where you don't get you're interested in the characters, but you don't get a lot of character development. I mean, they're not characters that you sort of latch on to, really. You're always a little detached, I suppose, from the characters. And the plot is, all over the place, as you can gather, and doesn't get kind of neatly resolved. So, but if you are prepared to embark on this as kind of like a reading adventure, a roller coaster, a wild ride of extraordinary experiences that will sometimes leave you completely baffled, sometimes might leave you cold, but other times will just delight, entertain, intrigue, fascinate. That's if that is how one of the ways that you can enjoy a book, then this is absolutely a book for you. And if not, then don't touch it with a barge pole. So it's a wonderful book for the for the right reader. Have you read it yet? What did you think? I would love to hear somebody else's view. I haven't. So the only other person I know who's read this book is Steve, my husband, and so I would love to hear some other opinions. He also, though, really enjoyed it. So let me know, and let me know if you do decide to read it, having heard this rather strange review.